If you're looking to promote your brand online, then the first place to look is to PPC campaigns. A PPC campaign is, of course, pay-per-click, and that means you pay each time a user actually clicks on one of your ads. There are several things that make this a fantastic way to generate traffic, which we'll look at later. For now, though, suffice to say that PPC gives you the precise control that any advertising campaign needs and allows you to build a perfect business plan with a precise advertising spend, target demographic, and profit margin. But when it comes to PPC, only one word will often come to mind: Google AdWords. Google AdWords is by far the biggest PPC platform and the one that most new marketers will go to first. But there are other options out there, and actually, focusing only on Google AdWords can be a big mistake for your campaign. We'll look in more detail at why this is in the coming videos, but suffice to say, Google AdWords is actually more expensive, more competitive, and less precise in many ways. And this is where Bing comes in. Bing can help you reach an entirely different section of your market while avoiding direct competition with some of the bigger competitors in the field. As we'll learn, Bing can offer you the perfect backdoor and can even help your rankings on Google. It's the perfect starting point for the small, lean business and a very wise backup source of traffic for all online businesses. In this video series, you'll learn more about Bing and how it differs to Google. You'll learn why it's crucial to start paying attention to Bing, and you'll learn how to take advantage of all its unique features. At the same time, we'll also be looking in depth at the best practices for creating successful PPC advertising campaigns on Google or Bing, and we'll see how this can be employed as part of a comprehensive business plan. Whether you're interested in using Bing ads or you're just thinking about doing more search optimization for Bing, it's time that you stop neglecting this search engine and focusing entirely on Google. Now, let's be honest, most of us don't really practice SEO, search engine optimization. We practice GEO, Google optimization. Google is the first and last word in internet marketing as far as a huge proportion of internet marketers and SEO agencies are concerned. It's time to change this way of thinking. But why? Why break the habit of a lifetime? Well, for starters, Bing has 20% market share. Well, that woke you up, right? Many of us think of the search engine industry as being a one-horse race, but really that's not the case. 20% is actually a pretty decent chunk of the market. And when you consider that Yahoo still makes up around 10% and that Yahoo is powered by Bing, that number goes up to 30%. This is a serious amount of web traffic. Now ask yourself, in what other scenario would you be happy to let 30% of a market walk? If I told you that you could get 30% more visitors to your high street store by changing your shop name, you'd change it in a heartbeat. 30% of potential visitors means 30% of potential customers and 30% of potential profit. Instead of earning $50,000 a year from your website, you could be earning $65,000 a year just by paying attention to Bing. Now, that's a massive difference and a free holiday. And there are plenty more reasons to wake up to the reality of Bing as well. For starters, Bing is integrated with Windows 10. Windows 10 is the latest iteration of Windows from Microsoft, and it comes with being deeply ingrained into the system. What's more is that Microsoft says this is the last version of Windows ever. That is to say that future upgrades to Windows are going to be iterative rather than complete overhauls. So we can safely say that Bing is here to stay. Not only is Bing the default search engine for the Edge browser, which comes with some pretty neat tricks up its sleeve, it's also the search engine used by Cortana. Cortana is a digital assistant like Siri that now lives on your desktop. If you want to find out the weather, for instance, you can simply ask Cortana, and while you're typing, she'll pull results from Bing and tell you. Bing has also recently made the transition to Android and iOS and is found nicely on your smartphone. This means that even if someone should set Google as their default search engine, they're still likely to be using Bing on their desktop without realizing it just by speaking with Cortana. If they ask, what does hypertrophy mean? Cortana will open up Bing and show the results in the browser. That could be your website that they're showing. And the same is true if they own an Xbox One. We don't have the exact sales figures for Xbox One right now because Microsoft are remaining quite tight lipped about them. But we do know that they're in excess of 25 million around the world. Xbox One comes with a lot of home entertainment functions, including a browser that you can use while playing games or chatting on Skype. And guess what search engine the Xbox One browser uses? While the Xbox One isn't quite the massive success that Microsoft had hoped for, PS4 still has the lead in the moment. The company is still getting great reviews in all other departments and is generally considered to be firing on all cylinders at the moment. Examples of this can be seen with the success of Windows 10, the Microsoft brand, and the Surface line of hardware. Then there's the huge buzz surrounding the HoloLens. HoloLens is a piece of mixed reality hardware that might well introduce the world to a new form of computing. And guess what search engine it's going to use? Anything could happen in the next few years to upset the apple cart and lead to Google losing market share. For example, Apple have repeatedly threatened to ditch Google as the default browser on iPhone, and this could very easily lead to a seismic shift for the search engine landscape. Then again, it might never happen. But the question is, can you afford to take that risk? Are you happy knowing that all your eggs are in Google's basket? And one last thing to consider is that Bing offers a lot of opportunity for the savvy SEO stroke webmaster. Why is that? Well, simply because Bing is lesser known and there are fewer people trying to rank there. Likewise, there are fewer people paying for PPC. That means you'll pay less per click and you'll find it much easier to get to the top of the SERPs. Specifically, well, you'll pay around 33.5% less on Bing compared with Google AdWords. In real terms, that means 33.5% more traffic for the same cost. A lot of people never consider Bing SEO and they don't know what the key to succeeding there is. That means the 30% of traffic to be found there is ripe for the taking. It means you can do a little background research and then just swoop right in and get to the top of the SERPs, that's the search engine results pages. You'll be in a smaller pond, but it will be much easier to get the fish biting. And what you have to understand is this can lead to more knock-on effects for your Google ranking too. Think about it. If you get to the top of Bing, then that leads to a lot of exposure to 30% of the web. This in turn means that you end up landing more backlinks and getting discussed in more forums and more comment sections. The same goes for paying ads on PPC. You can use this as your way in to boost your position in Google's SERPs, as well as to generally increase your brand without directly challenging the biggest players in your niche. And apart from anything else, if you completely rely on Google for all of your traffic, you put yourself at risk of something going wrong when Google changes its policies, which it does all the time, or should something go wrong with Google itself. Look, this is a video about Bing ads, but that doesn't mean we have to be unrealistically biased towards Bing here. There are still plenty of good reasons to prioritize your Google AdWords campaign. The biggest being simply that Google AdWords lets you reach a bigger audience. But with that said, it makes a lot more sense to make sure that you're on both. The Google apocalypse may never come, but you should still have a contingency plan in case it does. Finally, think about the kind of person who is likely to be deeply ingrained with the Microsoft ecosystem, who is likely to use Microsoft software suites and hardware. Simple. Businesses. That means executives, CTOs, and managers. And that means they're also likely to be looking at Bing. If that's your target demographic, then you should strongly consider adding Bing ads to your campaign. There are more reasons why Bing might be a better choice for building an effective PPC campaign. For example, it's generally considered that Bing offers superior control over ad campaigns in some aspects. For example, Bing allows you to set different ad campaigns for different time zones, allowing for sophisticated ad scheduling strategies. And this can end up making an important difference to your success. As in comedy, timing is everything for marketing. Likewise, Bing allows you to set more things like location and language for each ad group rather than for each campaign. Bing also allows more precise device targeting, letting you set different bids for different types of devices. It also lets you choose which search partners you want to work with, and it makes it easier to leave out variations of your search terms in order to create a more focused campaign. Oh, and on one little side note, Bing is actually much better looking than Google. Those daily features images really give Bing a relaxing and modern feeling, and the animated ones in particular can actually be reason enough in some cases to head on over to the site. Surely it's worth showing Microsoft some love for that. At the most basic level, Bing ads work like Google AdWords. So, if you're familiar with the concept of PPC in general, you can probably fast forward some of this video. Still here? Then let's quickly recap. Essentially, PPC ads are pay-per-click ads. That means you'll literally be paying per click, paying for each person who clicks on one of your adverts. The reason this is such good news is that you'll never pay anything for a campaign that was a complete failure. If you create an advertising campaign for Bing and not one person looks at it, then it will literally cost you nothing. It also means you can precisely calculate the cost of each visitor to your site. Now, this is important because you can use that information to calculate how much each customer is worth and thereby start making very accurate projections about your earnings and identifying the best ways to spend your money. So, the next logical question is how much you're going to spend on each click. And the good news is that you get to choose this. You get to choose your maximum spend and you also get to choose your budget for the day. First, you define your CPC or cost per click, which is going to be the maximum amount of money that you're willing to spend for each new visitor. You'll probably want to keep this fairly low. The most that brands will generally tend to spend is up to $2, but even that's unusual. Generally, though, you'll want to set this a bit lower and your average will probably come in at around 10 to 20 cents. The next thing to do is to set your daily budget. Once the accumulated clicks you've received reach this amount, they'll stop and you won't spend any more money. So, in theory, if you set your CPC to 20 cents and you set your daily spend to $20, that should mean you get 100 visits to your site for that amount. But things get a little more complicated, seeing as you don't tend to spend the full amount of your CPC. That's because there's a bidding system that takes place, which means you'll often spend a lot less. Now, the way this works is quite simple. If there are two or more adverts both competing for the same space on Bing, then they will enter into a bidding war. The ad with the highest CPC will be the one that wins and gets shown, but the owner of that ad will only be charged the minimum amount that it needed to win. The easiest way to understand this is to just think of it a bit like eBay. On eBay you can set your maximum bid, but you'll only end up paying $1 more than the next highest bidder. And the same is true with most PPC campaigns, and that's why you'll end up spending 33.5% less on Bing versus Google, because the lower amount of competition means that your CPC won't be as likely to get driven up. And of course, you also need to consider that your ads will be shown to a lot of people who don't click. You don't pay anything for these ads, but that doesn't mean they're worthless to you because you'll still be getting exposure and you'll still be starting to build your brand. The other thing that most PPC ad networks have in common is the ability to target a specific demographic. And this means that you can identify who your buyer persona is and profile your ideal customer from there. Then you can target that person specifically with your adverts. The way you do this with both Bing ads and Google AdWords is by targeting search terms. When you pay for these ads, you're literally putting your adverts on the SERPs relating to a particular search term. You do this by choosing a keyword or key phrase, which is going to be the thing that you want people to search for in order to find your site. So, for example, if you were selling a hat, your key phrase would probably be buy hat online or cheap hats, etc. This is now a targeted ad because it lets you advertise specifically to people who are looking to buy the thing you have. That means they'll fit within your target audience, and actually, this makes them qualified leads. Another way this might work is by going the slightly long term route and focusing on search terms related to interests. You might have a site where you blog about fitness, for example, and sell supplements and training clothing. In this case, your keyword might be how to lose weight or fitness articles. A good keyword is going to be one that is both popular with your specific target audience and that is not overly competitive. We'll look at this in more detail in the subsequent videos. Rounding out the holy trinity of PPC networks is Facebook ads. Facebook ads are similar to Google AdWords or Bing ads in terms of being PPC, but the difference is in where the ads are shown and how they're targeted. As you might have guessed, Facebook ads are shown on Facebook and will appear in the home feed and sidebars while you're browsing. These show ads which are once again tailored to the person using Facebook. But this differs insofar as the ads are targeted based on information the user has given Facebook. Information such as their age, their sex, their marital status, their location, and even their hobbies and interests. This allows you to even more precisely target the right person, but not necessarily at the right time when they're looking for products. When someone is browsing Facebook to catch up with their friends, they're more likely to be just frustrated to see your adverts popping up. With all this in mind, Facebook ads is another useful platform to add to your campaign in conjunction with Bing and Google AdWords. Just make sure you're using the right ads for the right location. As you can see, PPC works a little bit differently from traditional advertising in magazines and on TV. You're no longer paying for a single advert, nor are you paying for exposure. Instead, you're paying directly for clicks, and that means you need to think about things a little differently. The first concept to make sure you understand is that your aim is not necessarily to get as many clicks as possible. Traditional advertising campaigns will often focus on doing anything they can to get attention and to encourage clicks. But seeing as you're going to have to pay for each click, you can actually reduce the amount you're paying in total by reducing the amount of clicks you get. The objective is not to get as many people as possible to your website. Your objective is to get as many customers as possible to your website. In other words, you need to get traffic that's going to convert, and you actually want to dissuade all other people from clicking on your ads wherever possible. If you pay for 100 clicks and 99 of those pay for your product, then you can consider that a highly effective marketing campaign. Conversely, if you pay for 2,000 clicks and only 300 of those people buy, it's actually not been as successful because you will have spent more. What this essentially tells us is that the bottom line is by far the best way to gauge your success. A good PPC campaign is not one that gets seen a lot, nor one that gets clicked a lot. A good PPC campaign is one that earns a lot. This means it's impossible to separate your PPC strategy from your general business model, and it makes it very important to think about your budget, your costs, and your profit margins whenever you set up a campaign. So start by thinking about the profits for whatever it is you're selling from your site. If you're selling lots of products, this might mean working out an average profit you make from those products. Otherwise, if you're linking to a sales page and predominantly selling just one product, then it will mean thinking about how much you make from that one item. First, that means calculating your COGS, that is, cost of goods sold, and it tells you how much it costs you to make each of your products. Now, let's say that you sell phone cases. This will mean paying for the materials, the manufacturing, the delivery, and the storage. Then you have to subtract these overheads from the amount you charge for each item. What you're left with is your profit margin. The great thing about digital products like ebooks or online courses, which is what a lot of website owners sell, is that you have zero overheads, and that means you'll be making 100% profit on each sale. An ebook that you sell for $30 will give you a $30 profit. That said, ebooks appeal to a smaller audience when compared with physical items, and thereby you can expect to have a smaller conversion rate, which is the next point. So, here you need to calculate how many visitors on average buy your products from you. This means looking at your conversion rate. If you have 1,000 visitors a day and one sale, then that means you have a 0.1% conversion rate. If you make 10 sales for every 1,000, then that means you now have a 1% conversion rate. This can tell you how much you're earning in a day. For example, if you have 1,000 visitors a day, a 0.1% conversion rate, and a product that earns you $20, then you will earn $20. That also means you can work out how much you are going to be able to earn if you increase your visitors. If you could double your visitors, then you should make $40 on average. If you can multiply them by 10, then you should make $200 on average. More importantly for your Bing ads, though, this also tells you how much each visitor is worth to you. If 1,000 visitors equals $30, then that means each visitor is worth 3 cents. 3 cents isn't a lot of money, and that's why it's so important that you think about this before you create an advertising campaign. Because if you were to go ahead with these numbers and start paying $1 per click, you'd end up losing a lot of money. Working out your numbers first is what will allow you to ensure you're making a good profit. But what you might find is that you need to tweak some things before you get started. For instance, you can increase the asking price of your product and thereby increase your profits to 5 cents or 10 cents. Better yet, you should focus on improving your conversion rates by improving the quality or desirability of your product and by improving your persuasive writing so that people who land on your site will be overcome with the powerful desire to buy your products. If you can do this, then maybe you'll be able to increase your conversion rate to 5%, thereby increasing the value of each customer by 5 times that amount. Now comes the good part. If you set your CPC to this number, the amount that each visitor is worth to you, then you literally cannot fail. Your clicks will now result in profits, and the more you raise your budget, the more profit you'll make. You're spending less per click than each visitor is worth to you. Except that isn't quite how this is going to work. Because actually, here comes the good part, it's going to work better than that. That's because the people currently on your website are all people who got there through, well, all kinds of different means. These are people who found you on social media, who typed your address in by accident, who found you on Google, or who were recommended by a friend. And that means they're going to be variably targeted. Some of those people will have zero interest in your products. And that's why it's so important you think about targeting the right kind of user in your adverts. And that's also why we're not trying to simply get as many visitors as possible. As mentioned, it's actually more important that we get lots of the right users and put off people who aren't likely to want to buy. Your objective then is to make sure that the way you design your ads is only going to appeal to potential customers. That means your text shouldn't read, "Click here for the amazing secret to losing weight." Rather, it should read, "Click here for a $30 ebook that will make you lose weight fast." Or, "The secret to weight loss, just $30. What this does is prevent anyone not looking to spend money from clicking on your ad. We don't want these people because they're costing us money. But someone who knows the price up front and is still willing to click is very likely to want your book. Assuming you can convince them that your product is what they're looking for and it's good value for money, you should be able to walk away with a sale. Now, think about how much higher conversion rates will be for people who click this ad versus people who just stumbled onto your site. You can further target your customers by placing your adverts on the right keywords and key phrases. This is a big part of the PPC campaigns, and it's very much worth doing your research here. Again, you need to make sure your keywords are things that the right people are going to be searching for. At the same time, though, you also need to keep your competition low so that the average CPC will be as low as possible. If you try and rank for, say, hotels, then you're going to be up against thousands of other businesses, some of which will have near infinite resources. How do you like the sound of competing with Expedia, Airbnb, or Hotels.com and the rest? They can afford to offer $1, $2, or $5 per click, and you just won't be able to keep up. But use a keyword that is popular but not overpopulated, like quirky hotel Santa Monica or romantic getaway in Bournemouth, and you're going to be paying less and targeting a more specific type of customer, meaning you can use a more specific and tailored landing page for them focused on the area and type of experience. How do you find a keyword that's popular, directly targeted, but not overcrowded? Simple. You use Bing's own keyword tool, which can be found here at bing.com/toolbox/keywords. And then you just simply sign in with your Bing account or with your Microsoft account. And this tool will let you search different keywords and will then show you the amount of people searching for that term in the date range you specify. You can look at how many times a term has appeared in a search over the last 6 months, for example. If something came up 50,000 times, then that's a fairly good keyword that will potentially be able to grab you up to 50,000 visitors. But if the search term came up 100 times, then it's a lot less useful to you. Note that Google also has a keyword tool called its Keyword Planner, and you can use this in just the same way as you would use Bing's own keyword tool, and it doesn't really matter if it's from Google. People tend to search for the same things on both engines. And if you just do a search in Google for Google AdWords Keyword Planner, it'll direct you to the local version of the site. Finally, another tip is to look at your site's metrics and identify who is currently coming to your website. If you have Google Analytics set up correctly, then you'll be able to find out which visitors are buying from you and what they typed in order to get there. In other words, it might be that certain search terms result in more sales, or goals in Google parlance, and you can then decide to target that keyword with your Google and Bing ads. Finally, another mitigating factor is the small matter of CLV. Customer lifetime value refers to the fact that just because a visitor doesn't put down their cash right away, it doesn't mean they aren't worth anything to you. In fact, if they sign up for your mailing list and then become lifelong fans, they could ultimately end up being worth more to you. For this reason, the only way to really be sure if your Bing ads are working for you is to watch your metrics very closely. This means looking at how many visitors you're getting, where they're coming from, and how your sales increase as you spend. The more data you track, the more profitable any PPC campaign will be. So now you know precisely what Bing ads are, why they matter, and how they work. You also know how to create a PPC campaign generally, and you know how to select the right keywords, etc. What's left? Oh yeah, actually getting started and creating some ad campaigns. And with that in mind, let's launch straight into setting up some campaigns and doing a tour around Bing's options and tools. Before we get started, I'm going to assume that you A, have set up a Bing Ads account, and you can do that by going to secure.bingads.microsoft.com, and then it will redirect you to this page. And then you can sign up using your existing Microsoft account, or you can set up a new one, whichever is most convenient for you. And the second assumption, assumption B, is that you've chosen your keywords using the advice in the previous video. Here's the good news. If you already have a Google AdWords campaign set up, then getting that campaign to work on Bing is very simple. First, head on over to the link on the far right that reads Import Campaigns right here at the top of the toolbar. Click on it and then click here where it says Import from Google AdWords. Now click here on Sign in to Google, enter your name and password. On the next page, you'll be given the opportunity to select the AdWords campaigns that you want to import. Choose them and then click Continue. Now, under Bing Ads account and import options, you'll just need to add a few more settings that are unique to Bing. That means choosing the Bing Ads account you want to import to, choosing the right time zone, and remember that Bing allows more flexibility in this department, choosing the appropriate options under what to import, choosing the options you want for your bids and budget, and now just click Import and you're done. Remember we said earlier that the best way to handle Bing ads was to use them on top of a Google AdWords campaign? Well, this is why it makes a lot of sense to simply import an existing AdWords campaign into your Bing account. Yep, it couldn't be simpler. But if you don't have a Google AdWords campaign or you want to try something different on Bing, and this is a good place to experiment with different strategies, then you want to click Campaigns and then Create a Campaign. And you can choose between a search campaign or a shopping campaign. Search campaigns show just regular search ads, and shopping campaigns will show you products with images in your search ads. So let's have a search campaign. Let's click on that one. Now you'll be asked to give your campaign a name. Automatically it gives it the campaign and then number. I'm going to leave it at the default setting for this particular demonstration. Then you set your time zone, and having the time zone is very important in Bing ads. Then you set your campaign budget and your bid strategy. Then the language. Then the locations that you want to target or exclude, and you can have all available countries or regions. Because I'm in the UK, it's saying Ireland, United Kingdom, or selected states, provinces, countries, regions, and postal codes. And then the advanced location options. And this is very, very handy indeed. You can show ads to people in searching for or showing interest in your targeted location, people in your targeted location, or people searching for or showing interest in your targeted location. So, for example, you might have someone who's looking for a hotel or an amenity in an area that they intend to visit. So you can target them and not people in your local market. So it gives you a lot of flexibility there. Scroll down a bit more and you come here to create an ad. Now you want to create an ad. And first of all, you decide on your ad type and your ad title. Now, the ad title is the headline. And as you remember, we discussed earlier, the headline is not designed to get the maximum number of clicks, but rather to get the right kind of clicks. Then you want to have your ad text, which is just going to give your ad a bit more detail. And underneath, you're going to put your display URL. Now, if your destination is a very long URL, then you can simply use this as a permalink, or you can use the root location, or you can use the actual URL. It is up to you. You also want to set the landing page. It can be the final URL, or it can be a destination URL, and you can put all the information in here. For example, you want a mobile URL, etc. And all the way along, there are these little learn more question mark bubbles. If you click on those, it gives you a lot of information about how the whole site works. Headlines are 25 characters. Ad text is 71 characters. Further down the page is where you'll be given the option to choose your keywords, set keyword bids, and then verify activation. Meaning you set the method of payment and also you'll click that you want the ads to go live. Now, refer to the last video for more on selecting the right keywords. You'll be able to choose a bid for each keyword. So you might decide that some keywords are worth more to you than others. And this is very good news because it means you can pay very little for those more obscure keywords that would only get you a few clicks, but that likely wouldn't be very expensive due to a lack of competition. The more good news is that you can tweak and manage your campaign after it's gone live. This means you can see how it's performing and then see how they're working for you. You'll be able to find some more advanced settings here too, such as negative keywords and dynamic keywords. We'll look at these options in more detail in the next video. For now though, we want to focus on the other most important aspect of running your Bing Ads campaigns, which is tracking the success of your adverts. In this case, that's going to mean looking at how your ads are performing for you. And there are some really advanced features here that actually go a bit above and beyond what you would have access to with AdWords. We'll delve into these in more detail in the next video. But for now, make sure you're watching your basic metrics like a hawk. Click the Reports tab here and then Standard Reports over here on the left-hand side and select any one of the 18 different performance reports to get your statistics. You'll be able to see things like your average CPC, your cost per click, your average CPM, cost per impression, CTR, click-through rate, and a whole lot more. There are numerous advanced features and options you can tweak in order to get the very most out of your ads, and these can make a big difference to your campaigns and your profits. For example, there's negative keywords. Now, negative keywords allow you to add keywords that you want to ensure don't bring up your ads. Now, normally Bing and Google will show your ads based on very similar keywords, though Google does this more than Bing, meaning that if your keyword is fitness books, you might find your ads showing up on free fitness books. The only problem? Well, someone searching for a free fitness book probably doesn't want to pay $20 for a fitness book. So in this case, it would be pertinent to make free a negative keyword so that people looking for free things are excluded from your campaign. Then there are dynamic keywords, and dynamic keyword insertion allows you to automatically insert your keywords into your ad's title or text. This means that, for example, you could make it so people find whatever product they search for sale, or if they search hats, then you might show them buy hats online. Another neat feature of Bing is the ability to add ad extensions. This will allow you to add things like links to your site, locations on a map, or a click to call button. An ad extension means that, for example, you could get your customers to call you right from the Bing search results on their mobile. The site link is used to link people into deeper pages of your site, such as specific item listings in your store, for example. Targeting allows you to specifically target the type of person you want for your ads even more. By clicking Advanced Targeting Options, you'll be given the option to select your viewers by their genders and ages. That's based on their Microsoft accounts. By the device that they're on, perhaps if you're selling an app, you might want to target mobile devices, for example, and by schedule. Schedule is important because it means you can avoid wasting money showing ads at 3 a.m. in your local area. It also means you can get even sneakier and, for example, show ads only later in the evening. As it gets later and we become tireder, we actually become more impulsive and thus more likely to click buy on an advert. You can use Bing Ads to set up goals and then see how customers are interacting with those goals. You may recall that we discussed goals in an earlier video in the context of Google Analytics. We also discussed how you could use these to identify the best keywords for your ad campaigns. Well, once you have your ad campaign set up, you can actually integrate your ads directly with your goals. This is a much more valuable metric than simply your average CTR, your click through rates, although that is still a useful measure. To set up goals, go to your campaigns and then click Shared Library and then Conversion Tracking. You'll need to get a UET tag. Now, this is a small piece of code that you'll put on your website to link it to your Bing ads. Just click here, Get Started, on the page here where you create your UET tag and follow the on-screen instructions. It's all fairly straightforward. Then click Conversion Goals from the left-hand menu. And then click here where it says Create Conversion Goal, and once again follow the on-screen instructions. Once you've done this, you'll be able to see how your ads are performing in terms of helping you to get the results you're looking for, i.e. sales. This in turn will allow you to see which ads you should be spending more or less on and whether or not you're actually getting ROI from them. This will eventually allow you to calculate a specific CPA, or cost per action, which means you're finding out more precisely how much it's costing you to make sales or get subscribers. You'll also be able to do a lot more tracking for your ads, and looking around the dashboard will help you to find all kinds of useful options. For example, you'll be able to find your quality score for your ads by looking on the campaigns page. This gives you a score from 0 to 10 that will show how your ad is performing. You'll learn how high your CTR is compared with other CTRs for similar campaigns targeting the same traffic. Anything about 7 is considered very competitive. 6 is competitive, and anything below is underperforming. If you have a blank dash where your score should be, it means Bing doesn't have enough information yet. Based on the success of your ads, you can then head over to Bid Adjustments, which does exactly what it says on the tin and allows you to tweak your ads so that you're paying more or less per click. So now you know how to run a Bing ads campaign, and you know why you should be running a Bing ads campaign. But this doesn't mean you're done with Bing, not by a long shot, because you can still get more out of it by thinking about SEO as well. SEO for Bing has all the same benefits over SEO for Google that Bing ads have over AdWords. That means less competition, slightly different market, 20 to 30% of the market share. And a lot of people will know all these things and still not do anything about it, which might leave you asking why not. Well, there is one more thing to consider here, and that's just how different Google and Bing really are. Because the assumption is you can probably focus on SEO for Google, and then rest assured you'll gain more exposure on Bing too. So you can put your time and effort into the biggest search engine and know it's probably helping out on Bing too. As Google still has the biggest market share, that should still be a priority. It just doesn't make sense to turn it on its head. So, does this argument hold water? Just how different are Google and Bing anyway? Well, it's certainly true that a lot of your SEO practices are going to remain the same on Google and Bing. Both Google and Bing have the same end goal, and that end goal is to supply their users with beautifully made, high-quality content. Thus, they will use similar means to achieve those ends. Both look for sites with lots of backlinks, both as a way to find them and as a way to learn what they're about and whether they're held in high regard. Likewise, both will analyze the text on a site and look for the use of keywords. So writing content and building links are both activities that you should be doing, no matter which search engine you have in your sites. But there are certainly some differences too. So here's the thing, you don't have to focus on Bing at all. No one is asking you to ditch your efforts on Google. That wouldn't be a smart business move. But if you understand how Bing works, then you can do a little of both. You can add in a few new techniques that you know will help your Bing ranking, or you can occasionally write a post for Bing. And this is just stuff that you should know. So let's make sure you know it. Before we look at SEO for Bing specifically, it makes sense to first look at SEO generally. Just what is SEO? How does it work? And what does it involve from a marketing perspective? Essentially, SEO means you're building your site to show up in the search results, the aforementioned SERPs. This is what we call an organic result. It gets the same overall effect as targeting a specific keyword with a Bing ad, except you aren't paying for it. Of course, this also makes it less guaranteed insofar as it might not work. SEO is a lengthy process that's based a fair bit on luck. Essentially, SEO is performed by adding lots of great content to your website so that Google and Bing can identify the topic of your site and know which searches to show your links for. This content needs to be well written so that it will look better quality than the content from other sites. At the same time, it should use subtly inserted keywords throughout the text, the headers, and the HTML tags so that the search engines can index it for the keyword you're targeting. Don't overdo this though, or you'll get penalized. The other main ingredient for a successful campaign is your backlinks profile. This refers to all the links around the World Wide Web that are pointing to your site. These are good for you because Google and Bing consider them references. If a big site is willing to link to you, then it suggests that you must be a serious site in your own right. And this is another reason it's important to write high quality content. And it's a reason that you need to think about the quality of your links as much as the quantity. At the same time, having inbound links is important because it helps Google and Bing to find you in the first place. Both search engines use robots, these are small scripts, that search the web by following links. Once you're indexed, you'll be checked regularly. Until then, though, you're relying on links. Combining PPC with SEO is a match made in heaven for a number of reasons. For starters, gaining more traffic for your site is always going to increase your visibility in the SERPs organically because it will mean more people see your site and hopefully share it with others, thereby linking to you. This then improves your organic backlinks profile and it helps you to climb the ranks. At the same time, using PPC allows you to test out a particular keyword and see how it's likely to work for you and bring in more customers, or not. This can show you which keywords are worth putting in the work to try and rank organically for. Likewise, this also works in reverse, as we discussed earlier. You can see how your organic results are working for you and which ones are helping you to get actual customers. From there, you can see which keywords are worth spending money on. You can also use a combination of both PPC and SEO in order to cover a wider spread of keywords, thereby bringing more people to your site. Internet marketers, meet Bing. Bing, meet internet marketers. Right, with the introductions out of the way, let's get you two acquainted. Point number one, Bing likes to take things literally. Bing is a bit like that slightly slow friend that you had in school who didn't really understand jokes. Or, to put it another way, as in AI, Bing is probably somewhere on the spectrum. Yes, taking things too literally is one of the most common criticisms leveled at Bing, and that's because it has a tendency to simply look for exact matches in the content. If you search for "I like to eat steak," then Bing will look for websites that have that phrase or something similar in the text. On the other hand, Google just looks for content about steak and about people who like to eat steak. In this way, Google shows a little more understanding and has more ability to read between the lines. Not that this is always a good thing, mind. Sometimes Google's second guessing can actually be a bit irritating and can lead to results that aren't directly related to what you're looking for. If you ask a question, for instance, then Bing will be more likely to bring up a page where someone else has asked the same question, and this can be very useful. But what it means for you is that it's still worth using some keywords. Whereas Google is much more about latent semantic indexing and writing around the subject, perhaps using some long tail keywords. Bing will still reward you for including the very basic keywords that you're trying to rank for. So try and do a little of both. You'll want to use a slightly lower link density than you used to if you want to avoid being penalized for spamming by Google, but you should still include some keywords there for Bing. Point number two, user engagement matters. Something that Google and Bing can agree on is that user engagement matters. Except Bing is even more explicit about this, if anything, and has even coined a phrase to describe the activity they want to avoid: pogo sticking. There will be none of this, thank you very much. Pogo sticking is when a website visitor jumps from one result, clicks back, and then clicks on another. This is what they want to avoid. So if you want Bing to love you, you need to prevent your visitors from wanting to click back. This means you need to grab attention early on, and it means that you need to think about your page speed, your design, etc. Point number three, so do click-through rates. Another similar factor that Bing also takes seriously is CTR, the click-through rate. In other words, how many people click on your link. So if they keep showing your website in their SERPs but no one ever clicks on it, this suggests your site doesn't look very interesting. All it's doing is cluttering up the page and taking up space that another site could make better use of. This is quite a clever way for Bing to check that the results coming up are relevant, or that they seem relevant in the eyes of visitors. This is interesting because it's not something that Google talks a lot about. And improving your CTR is going to involve a rather different process compared with the SEO practices you're probably used to. What improves CTR? Well, many things, but of course the title and the meta description are going to be right up there. Think about what will be interesting for someone who is searching for the key phrase that you're trying to rank for. Make sure there is a direct connection here and have all the signals pointing to the same topic. And learn how to write engaging titles and descriptions. Point number four, social signals are big on Bing. There's some debate still as to the role of social signals on Google even now. We know for a fact that getting +1s on Google Plus will improve your Google ranking, but whether the same is true for Facebook likes is less certain. And if Facebook was central to Google's strategy, then you might ask why BuzzFeed isn't the #1 result for every search. But Bing has gone on record as saying that social signals do matter to them, and this means that you should definitely include social media marketing as part of your marketing strategy. Point number five, crawl depth. Going back to your site content and keywords for a moment, it's also interesting to consider the difference in crawl depth for Google versus Bing. Reportedly, Bing only crawls around the first 100 kilobytes of a web page, unlike Google, which will read your whole site. This means you should aim to include your keywords more heavily in the first portion of your content compared with the rest. And this actually makes a lot of sense for Google too, but for different reasons. Google actually looks at certain key points within your content as being more important indicators than others. The first paragraph is one section that's given extra importance, as is the last paragraph and other headings. And by increasing the keyword density in your first paragraph, you can send the right signals to Bing without getting too spammy with keywords for Google. Everyone wins. This also introduces some other interesting points too. For instance, a lot of people will rely on sitemaps in order to help search engines index their site. This is one page that links every other page on the domain, and it means that once the map is indexed, Google knows where to find all future content you add. But this won't work for Bing if it's only reading the top segment of the page. If you want your sitemap to work for Bing, you need to ensure that you put pages you most want to be found right at the top. And if you're adding new content, you want to make sure that new content goes at the top of any list rather than at the bottom. Point number 6, respect your elder content. Bing believes in golden oldies. In other words, it believes that an older domain is more likely to be authoritative than a newer domain. So if you have a page that's been around for a long time, you'll find it gradually climbs up the rankings. This is one thing that's personally always put me off about Bing. Most of the research I do requires up to date and current answers, and that means I can't make do with posts from 2012. When I search on Bing, I'm often left wondering if anything I'm reading is relevant anymore. This is a personal preference, though. As far as SEO goes, it's actually a good thing. Why? Because it means that Google is going to like fresh content and Bing will give it some love as it starts to fade. But do bear in mind that both Bing and Google prefer older domains. Of course, there are way more differences than we have time to go into in detail, so let's look at some rapid fire differences to finish off. Bing likes keyword domains more, Google prefers brand name domains. Bing takes site authority very seriously. It likes editorial content, older domains, and established organizations. PageRank is less relevant for Google these days, and it's never been relevant for Bing. Bing likes content closely linked to a site's homepage, and it likes breadcrumbs. Another thing to take some time to learn is about Bing's spam filter, and this is how Bing decides whether or not to penalize sites that show up in its SERPs. So you need to make sure that you observe the rules that Bing recommends. This means being careful about your outbound links, only link to clean sites, don't trade links, and use Bing's webmaster tools to find out if your site's been blocked. That's right. Bing has a webmaster tools just like Google does, and it's just as useful stroke invaluable for marketers. And you can find this at bing.com/toolbox/webmaster. As the Alan Parsons Project sang, where do we go from here? Now you have lots of information about why Bing SEO matters, how it works, and how different it is from Google. But you also know that you need to keep focusing on Google. So what's the best way to proceed? Well, exactly as we said earlier. For the most part, you're not going to do anything that differently, but you may want to consider including a few more keywords in your opening paragraphs. Maybe show a little more love to your legacy content and perhaps reorganize your sitemap. Oh, and definitely think about your titles, your meta descriptions, and how these factors will impact on your CTR. And in doing all that, you'll be throwing Bing the occasional bone that will help you to succeed a little bit more on the second biggest search engine in the world. And this will help you start tapping into that 30% market share a bit more and hopefully improving your number of visitors. And if the Google apocalypse ever does come, at least you'll have a backup site that will still be bringing you fresh visitors and helping you to run your business. And then everyone else will find themselves wishing they paid just a little bit more attention to old number two. Oh, and one last thing. Why not go and take a look at your current rankings on Bing right now? If you haven't looked before, then it might surprise you just how similar or different the results are. At this point, you should now have a solid idea of what Bing ads are, how they work, and most importantly, how you can get them to work for you. But there is more to creating a successful campaign. You'll find that the more you work at it, the more you learn and the more you can keep honing your strategy to create better and better ROI. And here are some more tips and tools to help you do that. Bing Webmaster Tools is an immensely useful tool for monitoring both your PPC progress and your SEO on Bing. To get started, just head over to bing.com/webmaster and sign in with your Microsoft account. That's the one that you use to log into Windows. And you'll then be redirected to this page. And from here, you can add your site by putting it into this box and clicking Add. On the next page, you'll be prompted to add some details about yourself, your name, your company name, etc. And then you'll be asked to place an XML file on your server to help Bing keep track of your site. And this will allow you to find out how your site is performing in searches. And you can combine this with your PPC metrics to get a more complete picture of your overall progress, your hits, etc., etc. Another useful tool that Bing offers is its SEO analyzer. This is a tool that you can use to look at the SEO on your page. On-site SEO is also very important, meaning things like use of your keywords and your general coding practices, that sort of thing. It all matters. It's all very important to Bing. And this particular tool will analyze 15 different metrics, such as your H1 tags, your metadata, and more. And you can find it here at bing.com/toolbox/SEO analyzer. Want to bring your ads further up the SERPs? Here are some fresh tips from Bing's own site. First of all, increase your ad relevance. The more directly relevant your keywords are to your landing page, the more likely Bing is to show your ads high up. Bing goes on to suggest that you try to avoid gimmicks on your landing page and to be upfront with an interesting and clear product. This will help your conversion rates too, so it's very much worthwhile. You should also showcase specific content and talk to your customers in their language to create what Bing will see as effective ads. Increase your bid. Of course, the higher you bid, the better your chances will be of ranking high up in the SERPs. And here's one not from the site. Improve your Twitter followers. Bing has a close connection with Twitter, and this has allowed a feature where it can show the number of followers you have on Twitter next to your ads. This is called a social extension, and it's another place where Bing beats AdWords. When all is said and done, the best way to learn how to make the most of Bing is simply to learn on the job. Watch your metrics over time and tweak your approach accordingly. However, all the information in this video series will ensure that you're in the best position to start an effective PPC campaign generally and an effective Bing campaign specifically. The key is to look at the end result and your ROI as opposed to just trying to get the maximum number of clicks possible. At the same time, you need to think about setting up goals and being as precise as you can with your keywords and descriptions. The other big tip: invest in Bing. Bing might not be as big as Google, but that's actually an advantage. You'll pay less and get seen more, meaning that you can bring many more visitors to your site without directly competing with the biggest players in your niche. At the same time, this way, you can give yourself a boost and start to grow your audience even with less of a budget in the bank. Then you can benefit from the surprisingly impressive unique features of Bing, including more advanced targeting, tracking, and more. And if there ever is a Google apocalypse, well, you'll be laughing.